Steady-state exercise. This report is about the impact of steady-state exercise on bodily systems, including systems such as the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, neuromuscular system, and energy systems. Steady-state exercise is an endurance-focused cardio type of exercise, meaning staying in one training zone for an extended period of time. This zone is 60 to 80% of maximum heart rate. An example of steady-state exercise could be a long run, according to Candice Cunningham on aptiv.com. There are three different types of hypothesis. The first is a null hypothesis, which is a hypothesis in which there is no relation between the independent and dependent variables. According to subjectlectures.com, a null hypothesis is contrary to the positive statement of a working hypothesis. The second type is a single-tailed hypothesis. A single-tailed hypothesis refers to a test of null hypothesis in which the alternative hypothesis is articulated directionally, according to Serby on keydifferences.com. A two-tailed hypothesis is a null hypothesis wherein the critical region is one of both tails, according to Serby on keydifferences.com. I chose to use null hypothesis for this experiment. Before exercise began, our client participated in a 2-minute warm-up. After this, we took readings for blood pressure, breathing rate, heart rate, and oxygen saturation. The reason we did this was so that the warm-up did not increase our values and thus affects the result we achieve. In other words, this way we can increase the accuracy of our initial percentage increases. We continued to take the heart rate using a heart rate monitor every minute because this way we could increase the accuracy of our final results. We also took it after to measure how quickly heart rate returned to normal, as this is also a good way to measure if the client was exercising in a steady state. Blood pressure was measured with a sphygmomanometer before and after for the same reasons as heart rate, but only every 4 minutes during. This is because these are values we need to prove our hypothesis, as these values show an initial increase and plateau as long as results align with normative data. As for lactate, we used the portable lactate analyzer, measured it before, 3 minutes in, and 16 minutes in. This is because this test can be painful for the client, so must be done minimally. In theory, there should be no increase in lactate as the clients are using their aerobic energy system. However, if the clients are working too hard and not in a steady state, their lactate levels would continually increase, which can be monitored by measuring lactate at these times. We measured the Borg scale by asking the athletes their rate of perceived exertion at 3, 8, 13 and 20 minutes. Theoretically, these values should increase slightly as the clients tire. By keeping the times measured far apart, we reduce the amount of repeated results. During steady state exercise, breathing rate should also increase to 3 minutes and then plateau until the end of exercise. By taking readings every 2 minutes by counting the client's breaths in 30 seconds and doubling it, we can achieve results showing the increase in plateau. In theory, from 3 minutes onwards, all results should be similar. So by not taking readings after 16 minutes, we should have removed repeated results. We took results for oxygen saturation by using fingertip oxygen saturation meter before, after, and every 5 minutes during exercise. This way, we see the slow decrease of oxygen in the blood. If we had taken readings more frequently, then the results would have been similar each time as the aerobic energy system works slowly. Impact of steady-state exercise on the cardiovascular system. Before exercise, there is an anticipatory rise in the heart rate as a result of an increased level of adrenaline secreted from the adrenal glands. This stimulates the SA node to increase the heart rate. As exercise begins, there is initially a rise in heart rate as the peripheral receptors detect changes. Peripheral receptors include proprioceptors that detect movement, chemoreceptors that detect chemical changes such as an increased carbon dioxide concentration in the blood, and baroreceptors that detect changes in blood pressure. These receptors then send afferent electrical impulses along sensory neurons in the sympathetic nervous system to the medulla oblongata. According to deanphysiology.com, chemoreceptors detect CO2 in the blood and send signals to the medulla. Once here, the impulse travels to the cardiac control center, which stimulates the SA node, and heart rate increases. After around 3 minutes, this increase plateaus as intensity remains constant and submaximal. This means aspects such as carbon dioxide concentration in the blood stay the same, so impulses sent from the chemoreceptors to the sympathetic nervous system ultimately instruct the heart rate to stay the same. Heart rate remains around this level until the end of exercise. which is when it decreases sharply back to normal as there are no waste products that need to be flushed out. This is as a result of the muscles being able to use the aerobic respiration to create energy. This method leaves no waste products. Stroke volume is the volume of blood ejected from the heart in one contraction. According to Montana State University, the stroke volume of a normal resting heart in the average adult is between 60 to 80 milliliters of blood. However, according to Luan Voza on Livestrong.com, elite athletes have an estimated stroke volume of between 90 to 110 milliliters at rest, to 150 to 220 milliliters during cardio training. Pre-exercise, stroke volume will increase at the same rate as the increase in heart rate due to the anticipatory rise, which is caused by the increase of adrenaline secreted from the adrenal glands and detected by the central nervous system. As exercise begins, stroke volume will increase further as the intensity of exercise increases and because there is an increase in venous return. This means that there is more blood entering the heart per beat, so the heart must stretch more and more must exit in the same time frame. One reason for the increase in stroke volume is the increase in venous return, which is caused by an increase in the contraction of the skeletal muscle pump. Once the submaximal exercise remains constant, stroke volume plateaus. This is because muscle contraction does not increase, so the skeletal muscle pump doesn't work anymore, so venous return plateaus. Stroke volume does not decrease at any point during steady state exercise, as intensity does not reach a level such that the heart does not have enough time to fill before contracting. This theory is backed up by Adam Drake on Prezi, who says stroke volume reaches its max during submaximal exercise. Once exercise has been completed, stroke volume returns to normal as venous return decreases. Cardiac output is the measure of volume of blood ejected from the heart per minute and is calculated by heart rate times stroke volume. According to Joseph Eitel, cardiac output for an adult can vary from 4.8 litres to 6.4 litres. However, amongst elite athletes, this value can soar to 40 litres per minute. As the anticipatory rise sees an increase in heart rate and stroke volume, it is inevitable cardiac output will also increase. As exercise begins, cardiac output will increase as stroke volume and heart rate increases, as a result of an increase in venous return and SA node stimulation respectively. As per Mandy Ross on Livestrong.com, at the onset of exercise, your muscles signal your heart to pump faster. As with the aforementioned aspects of the cardiovascular system, after around 3 minutes cardiac output will plateau as intensity remains constant, meaning stroke volume and heart rate must as well. Once exercise is over, cardiac output quickly returns to normal as there are no waste products to expel. The vascular shunt refers to the blood distribution around the body during exercise. According to Paige Bromberger, during exercise, the vascular system redistributes blood to areas with the greatest demand for oxygen, away from areas with a lower demand for oxygen. During steady-state exercise, blood flow is concentrated around the working muscles and is directed away from non-vital organs, such as the bladder, by precapillary sphincters. These constrict and restrict blood flow in non-essential areas, allowing for a richer supply of blood to the working muscles and more aerobic muscular respiration. According to OpenTextbook.com, blood flow through the capillary beds is controlled by precapillary sphincters to increase and decrease flow depending on the body's needs. Systolic blood pressure is the amount of pressure exerted on the arteries by blood when the heart contracts, whereas diastolic blood pressure is the pressure exerted on blood vessels when the heart is relaxed. Systolic blood pressure increases during steady-state exercise as the force of heart contractions increases, resulting in more pressure being applied to the walls of the blood vessels. Heart rate contractions increase in force as the heart grows more during steady-state exercise, allowing a greater volume of blood to rush in and out per beat. However, diastolic pressure decreases during steady-state exercise as blood vessels vasodilate, meaning there is less pressure in the veins returning blood to the heart. Jack H. Wilmore et al. In the book Physiology of Sport and Science describe the changes in blood pressure as temporary. In order to combat the increase in muscle temperature, the volume of plasma in the blood increases. Plasma supports sweat glands and enables them to produce more sweat in order to cool the skin and working muscles. Plasma also helps maintain body temperature by absorbing and releasing heat, according to J. Keith Fisher on Healthline.com. Venous return increases during steady-state exercise as a result of the vasodilation of blood vessels. There are also mechanisms that work together with the aim of increasing venous return. One such mechanism is the skeletal muscle pump, which is the contraction of muscles to squeeze veins and push blood back towards the heart. During exercise, the rhythmic pump of your muscles facilitates venous return by forcing blood through one-way valves that lead to the heart, according to Michelle Matt on Livestrong.com. These one-way valves are pocket valves, which prevent the backflow of blood, making venous return more effective. According to Reference.com, Starling's law shows that the stroke volume of the heart grows as the volume of blood filling the heart increases, even if everything else stays the same. Any increase in Starling's law is dependent on venous return. As we know, venous return does increase during steady-state exercise as a result of the skeletal muscle pump, among other things. This means Starling's law is true of steady-state exercise because more blood enters and exits the heart. As more blood enters the heart must contract with more force in order to eject a greater volume of blood. Furthermore, Joseph Fair says, increased filling pressure stretches the heart and increases the force of contraction on ScienceDirect.com. The respiratory system. A normal adult will breathe 12 to 16 times a minute, according to Reference.com. At the beginning of exercise, breathing rate increases in order to facilitate an increased level of oxygen in the blood and an increased volume of exhaled carbon dioxide. It knows to do this as chemoreceptors detect an increase in CO2 and decrease in oxygen concentration in the blood. As it's being used up, the oxygen must be replaced by inhaling more. According to Jeremy Holmes on Livestrong.com, this increase is also influenced by the sympathetic nerves stimulating the respiratory muscles to increase the rate of breathing. After around 3 minutes of exercise, breathing rate will plateau as the intensity of exercise plateaus. So no more oxygen concentration is required in the blood at the site of the working muscles. Once exercise is completed, breathing rate returns to normal quickly because there are no waste products to flush out, so chemoreceptors stop detecting high levels of CO2 in the blood. Tidal volume is the volume of oxygen inspired per breath. As exercise begins, a higher concentration of oxygen is required in the blood as it is being used up in aerobic respiration. The decreased oxygen concentration in the blood is detected by the chemoreceptors in the peripheral nervous system. As per Alex Folkel on Livestrong.com, exercise causes an increase in tidal volume because your requirements for oxygen go up. During steady-state exercise, tidal volume plateaus as enough oxygen is being supplied at the site of the working muscles, and the chemoreceptors do not detect an increase in CO2 concentration in the blood. However, after exercise, tidal volume returns to resting very quickly as there are no waste products needed to be removed from the bloodstream. For an elite athlete like Mo Farah, tidal volume is high. This is because they do so much endurance training, their lung volume increases. In the case of Farah, he runs between 126 to 135 miles per week, which means his lung volume, and thus tidal volume, is dramatically larger than any normal person. During steady-state exercise, pH levels in the blood decrease or become more acidic because of lactic acid production and increased carbon dioxide levels, according to Laura Niezdoka on LiveWell.com. This decrease in pH means the oxygen dissociation curve shifts to the right in what is known as the Bohr shift. On medicalaxamore.com, the oxygen dissociation curve is described as a graph that plots the proportion of hemoglobin in its oxygen-laden saturated form on the vertical axis against the partial pressure of oxygen on the horizontal axis. The curve is a valuable aid in understanding how the blood carries and releases oxygen. As we exercise in a steady state, our temperature increases as a result of a greater volume of blood flowing to our working muscles. This increase in temperature sees the oxygen dissociation curve move to the right. Temperature does not have a huge influence on the oxygen dissociation curve, but can have a noticeable impact in the cases of hypothermia and hyperthermia, according to medicalexamprep.com.